Hello, everybody, and welcome to Scare Your Friends. I'm your host, John, a.k.a. Skillfully, and I'm joined by three of my friends today. Tonight we have Dan, Dylan, and William. What's going on, everybody?
Nothing much, John. What's going on with you?
I feel this is a very nostalgic episode, I feel like, because we have, like, the original crew, sans Nate, but he's basically dead. He doesn't count anymore. And, we are alive, in... But, you know. Yeah, sure. We are in, the basement, your basement, which is where we were recording these initially.
Before we moved to the penthouse.
Before we moved
in New York City.
The penthouse. No, we made a joke about being in a recording studio.
Oh, that's a good
one. We had a Patreon that doesn't exist. We're paying for
it.
Yet. I would also like to get on record just to embarrass him. It is John's birthday today. Happy birthday, John!
Oh, happy birthday, John! Oh, what a day for him.
As he turns red and he puts his head in his hands.
What a day for him.
Why did I invite him? Why did I invite them? Why did I invite them?
And as a special birthday gift, John has gifted us with something we promised people fucking almost 2 years ago.
Yes, so it's funny enough, the last time this crew got together was probably in December of 2018. And yeah, there's, I obviously made a few mistakes with this contest.
You're falling into the classic YouTube pit trap, okay? You never apologize for making mistakes as a YouTuber. You deflect, you make excuses.
Don't you ever call me a YouTuber
But
again.
you don't...
Never acknowledge.
This podcast lives on YouTube. You never acknowledge. Don't ever apologize for anything you do wrong.
God Emperor of your realm.
That's true.
All right, well, in any case, back in the day, a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, there once was this contest.
That's right, folks. The three people that wanted to participate in this were asking for it. It's finally happening.
The King Emperor held it from us.
You know what, Dan? Don't discredit. It was 10 people.
It was 10 people.
It was 10 people. And we appreciate everyone who participated.
We do. It was fun. I got a kick out of it.
And so we decided, so the four of us judged them. And what ended up happening was just to kind of explain the process behind it, was pretty straightforward. The four of us read the stories and kind of graded them 1 to 3. We kind of came with our own top 3. I realized there would be way too many tiebreakers if we did the classic 3-2-1 point thing.
Right.
So I made it 4-3-2. And the reason why I did that is basically what that means is getting 2, we'll call them votes, is better than getting 1 vote, even if it's a first place vote. So a second and a third place beats a first place, essentially, right? That's kind of how I viewed it. That it was more important for stories to get on multiple people's lists than just one list.
That's how he disregarded my picks.
Listen, you're the math guy. This is all very fascinating, but I don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
All right. Well, so here's the thing. The 3 stories that finished in the top 3 were the 3 stories of the 10 that got at least 2 votes. Okay. This was a very divisive group. I don't know if that's the correct word. I think 9 of the 10 stories got at least a point. So it was pretty close.
We liked them all, guys.
We love all of you.
But we can only pick 3.
Well, he said 9 out of 10, so there was 1.
There was one
of you.
Whoever wrote that one, don't ever write anything again. I don't know which one it is. I have no idea.
But the rest of you are stars, and you're beautiful people.
Y'all get a participation
9
trophy.
out of 10 creepypastas say that 1 creepypasta will not do well.
That's true. That's very true. That is a
now
new
that's
statistic.
a stat I can understand.
There you go.
Right. So we're going to go through the 3 very briefly. What I think I'm going to plan on doing is, after we read the third second first, we want to get through these. So we're going to probably do a very brief sort of talk after we read each one, because we have to kind of get through all of them. So let's say maybe 5 minutes on each one.
You don't want to do another 2-hour Pen Pal podcast about these stories?
So anyway, what's going to end up happening here is that Dan's going to shut up, and we're just going to start.
Okay.
So our third place story, and also, by the way, to answer, I know William was joking earlier, but the other cool thing about this list is that of these 3 stories, all 4 of us are represented in some way. Everybody here had at least one of these 3 stories was in all of our top 3s.
Okay.
Essentially.
Gotcha.
So it's not like a person had a top 3 and then none of the stories made it.
I was still included.
That's all that matters.
So we're not going to talk about what we specifically picked, but...
well, we don't remember. Yes. Because we did this 8 to 12 months ago.
I didn't even remember judging it.
I only remember one of these. That's it.
So here we go.
All right, so we're going to go through our third place story, which got a second place vote and a third place vote.
Hey.
Drum roll, please. No? Not good?
It's the table's too far, and I didn't want to...
I think I fucked up the mic.
Yeah, I was about to say, I don't know why you did that, because
all right, so third place story.
You edit these.
Third place is the story called Revisions, and I know this was written by Beth Morton.
Oh, we're going to reveal, okay.
So yes, Beth wrote the story. She receives our third place prize.
Yay!
Yay!
We love you, Beth.
Pop confetti.
So let's just get into it. So this is the story called Revisions. There's a good chance I'll get a lot of hate for this, but let me get this straight. I do not hate the Cal Art style.
Can I just, because now that we're, I don't mean to cut you off, but now that we're rereading this, I'm kind of having memories of it. I did a little bit of research, if I remember what Cal Arts is, and it's like a very simple art style,
like the
thin
Peanuts,
lines.
maybe.
No. Like the examples that I found online were like Adventure Time or Gravity Falls, like very very simple.
Yeah, I remember talking about this with you very briefly.
and thin line art. So just as a preface.
Thank you, because I had no fucking clue.
Yeah, I did a little bit of research.
Yeah,
I'm
with Will on that one.
But you can, I mean, that kind of tipped us off, like, almost immediately. I was like, Beth definitely fucking wrote this one.
Yeah. Okay, sure, it's admittedly overused, and its simple designs can lead to some cheap and lazy animation. Hell, I'll even agree that they slap it on a lot of action-adventure reboots to turn them into a collection of jokes, not unlike the ones you see on any view-craving YouTubers, insert major animation company here, cringe compilations. That hurts my heart as much as the next guy. But I can't bring myself to call out that chubby-cheeked, round-eyed, sliced banana-mouthed face bad. I'm telling you this so that you know my feelings going into my second job. After an intensive 4-year course earning my degree and maybe a half year of practice may or may not mean mild to severe depression, debt, and joblessness,
That's
I finally landed a gig at an animation studio.
It's too real, Beth. It's too real.
Yeah, that's staying anonymous. All you need to know is it was a relatively small one, and that the first show I worked on was lost in the sea of lookalikes almost as soon as it aired.
We were just wrapping up the last couple of weeks on that production when news broke that something big would be outsourced to us. A bigger name studio was falling behind on their deadlines, so we've been hired to pick up their slack. In case you haven't already guessed, this was a big name Cal Art style reboot. Sorry to say that just like the company I work for, the show title is staying a mystery. This isn't something I want to lose my entire career for, let alone my immediate job. All you need to know is that going in, I was cautiously optimistic since it was a property I grew up with. I wasn't a super fan or anything, but still, it's far from a small part of my childhood. It ultimately doesn't matter, but in my personal opinion, the reboot itself was fine. Of course, the updated style gave way to a less fitting, oversaturated palette. The humor was about you'd expect from a kid's show, with jokes sometimes ranging from, huh, that's a little clever, and would go over a kid's head, to, if I heard one more word about someone's butt, I'll hang myself. But like I mentioned before, I don't hate the Cal Art style, so I didn't mind many of their deviations from the original. If I'm completely honest, they kept my favorite character almost entirely untouched, so I could have cared less about every other change they made. But I'm not here to pat this company on the back.
It was only a few weeks in when I started to notice little things that rubbed me the wrong way. The first was the stand-up meetings. The supervisor always had very little to tell us. They always said the same vague, unhelpful advice. Don't forget the principles and reference your timing chart. More squash and stretch. Don't do X, the client doesn't like that. Unsurprisingly enough, in no time at all, the retakes team had doubled in size. While I either animated shots started by the other studio or keyframed from the ground up, many of my immediate coworkers were pulled into the ever-growing group of people redoing work that didn't meet the client's demands. These demands ranged from move this character slightly to the right to redo the entire shot, background and all. Tons of work had to be redone. The retake team likely wasn't supposed to talk about the changes they were making, but I used to work across from this one ditzy girl before she was scooped up to join them. If the filter between her brain and her mouth was in a fish tank, the water would come out browner than when it went in. There's been more than one occasion where her coworkers had to shush her for name-dropping projects outside the office. I'm honestly shocked she's still alive, let alone employed.
Anyways, this girl told me just once just how much they had their work cut out for them. Aside from the typical tweaks, she said there was one character in particular that they got a lot of grief over. It started out small with keyframes being altered or acting choices swapped out. It never made much sense for them to be so fixated on perfecting a side character not even in the original series. But without fail, if she was in a shot, the retake team was guaranteed to get it back coded in notes and fixes. Her corrections were so frequent that the crew had their own inside joke about how this love interest was secretly the show's main antagonist and was just so evil that she wanted to destroy the production entirely. They laughed at this with the same sort of uncomfortable chuckle you'd hear from an artist being told their innocent drawing would be thought of as very sexy in some corners of the internet. They're pretty sure it's a joke, and they think it's funny, but they can't help worrying. At this point, something was definitely amiss. I started noticing changes in the supervisors' demeanors. Circles under their eyes, growing uncharacteristically impatient, and telltale signs of caffeine abuse. There's the chance that all of them were simultaneously going through something in their personal lives, but far more likely it was the production taking its toll. But then came the first in a string of announced changes to the series. It came as a shock to everyone when one morning at our stand-up, the head supervisor informed us that one of the characters was going to have a design change. While everything we'd already technically finished was going to be retouched by hand by the retakes team, the rest of us would be using a brand new rig with a trimmed hairpiece. I don't think I need to describe the looks on the faces of the entire retake team for you to know exactly which character this was.
Then, after a mere month of getting used to that, we were told the director wanted her to have a tattoo on one arm. I couldn't deny the bar stool, lunchroom, and bathroom stall talk I heard over the coming days. Even if deadlines were technically met, there was no way that every continuity error would be caught. I know for a fact because I once submitted a shot where I focused so hard on getting the hands right that the tattoo switched arms. It went unnoticed, and I only caught it long after it was approved. I didn't say anything since I didn't want to do it over again. And again, this is Beth we're talking about, who has worked in animation. I don't know, and I don't squat about animation, of course, but yeah, this from what she's told me, from working on certain projects, that this happens all the time with animation productions.
Yeah, it seems like
where it's like they'll notice the mistake, like a character's like hands aren't like for like a frame don't like look right, or if they have a tattoo or something's wrong with their face, it's like flipped or something, but they just don't say anything because they don't want to.
Who has the time?
Right,
right, exactly.
I know that pain way too well in school.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you're into. Are you doing animation in your college, or were you doing animation?
I was doing a little bit of animation. I've dipped my toes into the pool of animation, but it's not fun. It's not fun with especially when someone wants to redo it. I feel that pain immensely.
Everyone was growing increasingly frustrated with the high demand surrounding her, wondering what prompted all of this. I couldn't wrap my head around why they were this anal about a never before mentioned lover. A handful of people quit within that week. The director really was ensuring that this character single-handedly brought the production down in flames. After a month of scrambling to meet these new conditions, we were suddenly all assigned to retakes until further notice. It wasn't long before I supplemented some of the supervisor's vague question dodging with some eavesdropped water cooler banter. Have you noticed she's not in any of our shots? From the bathroom sink. I heard she's getting some major redesign revisions by the coffee maker. There's no way we can take her out entirely from a huddle of supervisors. Do you really think the new directional management can salvage this outside an office door? No.
They tried to quench the flames of the hot smoking dumpster fire as best they could, but it was too late. Soon enough, we all received emails thanking us for our time and reminding us of our NDAs. The reduction was over about as anticlimactically as the cliffhanger ending they wrote for it. We were cancelled. It didn't take long for the most of the cast and crew to be rehired on other projects, either with this company or another. It was clear they wanted to sweep their mess under the rug like the garbage it was. No one wanted to mention it in fear of causing an upset. I largely tried to forget about it all until that girl, the ditzy one, got back in touch with me. She'd flown across the country to work at another studio, and I only stayed in touch to have a connection in case I wanted to work there. But she called me once again to gossip about her new workplace between the accidental name slip and complaints about how hard the new style was. I caught a few details that worried me a lot more than they did her. Coincidentally, she was working at the studio that outsourced to us, and she snooped inside their production reference folders before they were purged from the server, and she saw her final updated character rotation. She had a black eye.
And that's how it ends. That was Revision. So, again, this was a lost episode contest.
Right.
And a lot of this actually reminds me of the good part of Squidward's Suicide. Where the guy... Because the biggest problem with lost episodes is believability. Like, as far as... Right, and in that one, it was a guy who worked with SpongeBob. So I think that was good. I think Beth obviously knows what she's talking about. I actually, from talking to her a lot, I think a lot of these experiences sound familiar. I think
right, and I think that's it's the greatest strength of the story, but also the greatest weakness. I feel like, because when you have something like Squidward's Suicide, it was very vague. It didn't come off like the guy or the person who wrote it necessarily actually did work in animation. It's very clear that this person, if I didn't know who this was, I would be like, yeah, this sounds like they're definitely part of this industry. But then you fall on the trap of, and we had a word limit, so I think that's part of the problem.
Right.
But you fall in the trap of, all right, well, I can kind of guess what some of these terms are, but I don't really know.
Like the inside baseball.
Right. And it kind of I don't think it takes you out of the story, but I think, like, if she had more time,
I think if she had more space, and that goes back to
just a brief kind of.
So because of this is the way I'm judging these, because of the word limit problem, and because we can't. In my opinion, I don't think we. And maybe this sounds stupid. I don't know if it's stupid, but like the way I see it is the stories we've read on Creepypasta Wiki and that are out there in the world. Those are fair game because those are clearly products that someone put out there. None of these were put onto the internet. We're the only ones who have read
well, yeah,
this
but
so
I mean,
far.
this Revisions is infinitely better than some of the other bullshit that we
I know, obviously.
Right.
So I'm trying to also see it from the perspective of the bigger idea behind it. And I think my biggest issue is I'm not really sure how to interpret the black eye. I think it could... One idea I had when I first read it, and I could be incorrect. I think Beth told me there was a very specific idea behind it, but she didn't tell. I didn't ask her not to tell me what it was. Maybe she'll tell me later. But I think one idea that I could come up with is that the workers are getting angry about the revisions that they have to constantly keep making to the point where they screw with the character, I guess. But that doesn't even make sense because they outsourced that eventually.
Well, it's interesting. It's an interesting idea because if that is the case, it's kind of like. It's like they're almost abusing a little girl, even though she's this fictional character, and that's kind of weird and
it felt like a weird, like, abuse allegory.
Yeah. Like, it's weird and creepy. But even, like, if it's still bizarre that you, this production company, if they were giving these notes and they kept trying to remodel this character, they're like, oh, give her a black eye. That is weird. It's very strange. Why would that show up on a kid's show? Although you look at something like Adventure Time, or what was the other one that everybody loves?
The Garden Wall?
No. Whatever. Like any of those CalArt style shows. That's the other thing too. Like any of these other CalArt style shows that I'm familiar with, which are not many. Like there is like creepy shit in those shows.
Gravity Falls CalArt.
Gravity Falls is CalArts, yes. So like Gravity Falls has like weird creepy shit in it.
Yeah.
So it would fit right at home in here, but it's odd that it is kind of weird and creepy that they're like, oh, just give this girl a black eye. It's like, what the that's fucking strange.
For me, and this might be, again, I don't want to harp on being negative because this is a very entertaining story, but this might come into kind of that kind of like inside baseball thing where maybe I'm not as cognizant of what some of the unspoken realities of this industry are that maybe feed into what all these happenings mean to the layman, which is me. I read this as like, oh, well, we went into the files and now she has a black eye. Does that mean that like across the board someone went in and angrily gave her a black eye, which means they had to remove her, which sank the production? Was that it?
It's also weird too, yeah.
Because again, that still makes sense with the whole like weird abuse.
Because they were
like
the director. I think.
I
Does it say the director like fired people, or did they just quit? I think people were quitting.
I think
it was canceled. I thought
a lot of people quit, and then it was canceled.
Well, to go on to what you're saying, Will, because
so
it felt like more like she was the I think Dan was saying the punching bag of everyone, because it's like this character was causing the most griefs to all these animators, to all the reworks.
Well, it's one thing if the animators did it out of spite. It's another thing if they were getting, because that's what Will's saying, if they were getting the note to change it, that somebody had to go in there and give this girl a black eye in every frame, which is also fucking weird and kind of like creepy. But yeah, it's unclear.
But also, it's like you're taking your frustration out on an imaginary little girl.
Well, that is also weird,
which is weird too. Which, I mean, it's disturbing, but like, I don't want to say things to be like weird, not, but like I feel like it's not. It's better than it's that person or animator going out in real life and punching someone. Or a kid,
right?
That.
But there's like a sinister.
But it's a sinister way of thinking about it. It's like if this is what this person did to this character,
right?
How is that person?
And they did it in every frame. Where, again,
how is this person in reality?
Right. It was good.
Yeah, I think it's
Beth,
solid.
Privately message me on Discord and tell me the meaning of the story.
Yeah, I feel like I think that's probably why it got third place, is my guess.
Yeah.
But like, I think it's well written, and I think that's ultimately if we can read it and it's interesting, then I think it deserves it.
Again, I think.
All right, so we're gonna move on, but before we
terminology.
move on, and I know we usually do this at the end, but since we're kind of rapidly doing this, any final thoughts on revisions before we move forward?
It was funny. It was good.
It's good.
A nice, accurate, pretty much accurate description of what goes on in animation behind the scenes to those who do not know that.
Right.
I mean, I've heard stories, but to hear from someone who has experience from it, it does say a lot of what goes on.
Hey, Dylan, does this story change your mind about whether or not you want to go into animation?
No comment.
Anyway, well written, clearly very, very. I'm not going to say the actual story itself is personal, but comes from a personal place, which is always good. You always want that. Yeah, very good.
All right, on to number 2. So, the second place entry was a little bit weird because somebody didn't use their real name when they posted this. I don't know if you remember how we did it, but the way it was, I showed a screenshot in a video about how to submit them through the email, and when I was showing that screenshot, the name was Your Name Here, and then the title of your story.
Right.
So the username for this submission is Your Name Here. And they wrote a story called The Worst Contestant, and that's our second place story. Who wrote the story? Technically, I don't know who it is. I'm 99% sure I know exactly who it is, because only one person I know uses fucking 97 word.
Okay.
Word 97.
Okay.
So, I have a pretty good idea on who it is.
What the fuck?
But you're not going to reveal it?
Were you friends with George R. Martin? He's still typing on DOS?
I'll tell you after this.
Okay.
We know for a fact they're not the worst contestant.
Jesus Christ.
Do you want a medal?
You know what? Well, you start reading.
Okay.
So this is
That's
the
your
story.
punishment.
The Worst Contestant. Go.
As a 20-something with no job and very few hobbies, I spend most of my time playing games and watching videos on the internet. Typical millennial, blah, blah, blah. I know.
That's the only reason why I play. Okay, Dango.
We got that on tape.
This, or that, was how I ended up watching The World's Worst Game Show Contestants Part 7. People giving really out-of-touch or offensive answers to mundane questions. I'm sure you've seen these before. I was getting that self-assured high off of watching others fumble, when one of the clips caused me to pause and go back. It seemed like a game show you'd see on Nickelodeon in the 1990s. Colorful set full of garish neon pinks and electric blues, stuff like that. 3 kids stood at podiums with buzzers in their hands, while the host stood on a short Greek column. Behind the host, there was a large foam climbing wall made to look like Mount Olympus. The host was probably in his 30s, with the usual coiffed hair and beige suit. He seemed like an unremarkable Hollywood type trying to make his break on this obscure show. Fake smile, smug personality, and so on. The host asked a basic question. What do you call the outer layer of skin? Easy. Epidermis. One child buzzed in. The peel! The other contestants laughed as the kids smiled dimly and looked confused as to what the joke was. The clip ended, and the video quickly switched to an elderly woman playing Family Feud.
I paused and went back again. I knew I had to be misinterpreting what I was seeing. Maybe it was too late at night, or maybe I had oversaturated my brain with this trite garbage. Nope, it was just as I thought. The kid who gave the wrong answer, it was me. Same face, same haircut I had, same t-shirt I loved wearing. I eventually noticed that the kid's podium had my name written on it as well. Dover. Well, now we know who wrote it. Dover wrote it, John.
Oh, yeah, perfect.
Passed to me from my grandfather. How many Dovers do you know? None, right? So 2 of us looking exactly the same at the same point in history completely boggled my mind. I should stress that I've never been on a game show. I've never been on television at all. I spent the next few months trying to figure out what exactly this show I had just watched. Keep in mind, while I was definitely interested in this, I wasn't searching obsessively as you'd imagine. Google searches from terms like 90s game show Mount Olympus was usually as far as I went. It was in 90s Kids Remember Facebook group that I found something. There was an image of shows that made children do physical tasks captioned, when getting a new bite meant risking your life in front of millions. One of the images had the show I was looking for, and it was angled so I could see a sign that read, Quiz Mountain. Finally, Quiz Mountain. It was a name so basic that I could have easily found it by Googling Quiz Show with Mountain if I had thought of it. The show was made in Canada. I'd never been outside the U.S.
I found more clips, but no full episodes. Worse, I couldn't find the episode with the kid that looked and dressed very much like me. None of the clips even featured anyone giving stupid answers. I had to buy a VHS collection on eBay. I could tell from the auction photo that some were official copies, complete with vivid Quiz Mountain covers, while others were illegally recorded onto blank tapes. When the videos arrived, I dug out my parents' old VCR. Yes, I live with my parents. This shouldn't surprise you by now. I fast-forward past every episode that didn't have my doppelganger. Pay dirt. I saw my face speed past as I was fast-forwarding one of the bootlegged cassettes and quickly went back to the beginning of the episode. "Welcome," boomed a godlike voice. A large foam puppet resembling Zeus's head arose behind the peak of a prop mountain. "To Quiz Mountain." A live studio audience cheered as the camera quickly panned past them. "On today's show," Zeus continued, "we have 3 contestants who will try to climb Mount Olympus and win my special prize. They'll need the wisdom of Athena and the skill of Artemis if they hope to reach me." The camera quickly cut to 2 beautiful women dressed in togas, one of the thick-rimmed glasses, the other holding a bow and arrow. They gestured to a large box made to look like a treasure chest. "Now here's your host, the man who's acting too stiff for Pompeii, Clark Carmelo."
Do you get it? Do you get the joke? Stiff for Pompeii. Do you get it?
Yeah.
Do you?
Mm-hmm.
Well, Dan, just for referencing, can you please let us know? Now that you're saying, "Oh, do you get it?"
The volcano erupted.
Yeah.
And everybody got buried under ash, and they were all frozen in time for thousands of years or whatever, 1,000 years or so.
Thank you.
Did you not get it?
Oh no, I knew. I just wanted you to explain to the folks that you were going.
Who's just saying for the?
Dear Garner.
I noticed the Zeus puppet would insult him like that at the start of each show, with a new jab written per episode. I skipped past most of them, though. The host, Clark, went through the usual explanation. The kids would answer questions, and their scores determined how far up the mountain they would start for the final physical challenge of climbing to Zeus. When it came time to introduce the contestants, a girl, a boy, and me, I was in for yet another shock, from Waterstown, Massachusetts, Dover Heathcliff?
Yes.
The place I grew up and my full name. From that point forward, I watched myself buzz in on every question. I was always first, and I was always wrong. Who discovered America? G.I. Joe. The capital, New York. Florida. The 8th planet from the sun. The moon. The contestants visibly cringed every time I answered. The audience would erupt in laughter. Clark Carmelo constantly mugged at the camera and shook his head. The quiz portion ended, and it was time to climb up and reach Zeus for the secret prize. All 3 kids wore knee pads, elbow pads, and different colored helmets. Mine was pink and half off my head. I started at the absolute base of the mountain-shaped climbing wall. The other boy started above me, and the girl was above us. Since I was standing on the floor, I just kind of swung my arms back and forth, smiled, and stepped out of one of my shoes. "Begin!" shouted the Zeus puppet. The other 2 kids began climbing quickly. I slowly followed a few seconds after. Within moments, I was crying and clutching onto the other boy's leg, trying to keep him from winning. I hung between a bungee cord and the other child as a massive foam lightning bolts were thrown at me, and only me from off-screen. Most of them were being aimed directly at my head and face as I squealed. The camera cut to the audience and focused on 2 people, my parents. My mom covered her face, and my dad got up to leave, gesturing for her to follow. They both looked humiliated.
I'm just going to quickly... So, there was... Yeah, in the 90s, there were these Nickelodeon game shows. But do you remember watching something where, like... There was something... It was like a tiki, right?
Temple,
so
Legend
Legend of the Temple.
So this is my jam, because this is what I grew up with, which is why I really like the story, because it is very... It's very creative and it's very clear. Like, this could have been a fucking show. It was Legends of the Hidden Temple. It was
that's
Olmec.
what this is reminding me of.
It was Olmec. It wasn't a tiki. He was like a mecha, like a South American head.
Like an Aztec head?
Yes, like an Aztec
or
head.
Mayan head.
It was the Mayan hidden temple.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's all I was going to say.
Starring Kurt Fogg. I think Kurt Fogg was the host.
Yeah, I could see why. Yeah, so this is so if the previous story was taken with personal experiences with working animation, this seems like it was run by somebody who also grew up on a lot of these shows, and
they're all great. They're cheesy as shit now, but I fucking still love them.
All right, that's what I still wanted to say.
It took the combined efforts of Clark Carmelo and the two toga-clad women to pull me down off the mountain. After which, the other boy began frantically trying to catch up with the girl. You'd expect I'd be escorted off the soundstage in shame. However, they simply threw me to the ground. I curled up in a sobbing, screaming ball as they kicked me viciously.
Jesus.
Clark retrieved his microphone and stand and began bringing it down on my ribs, a cold and dispassionate look on his face. All the while, the foam lightning bolts continued to rain down on me, ignoring the other contestants.
I fast-forwarded again, not blinking once. I watched the high-speed child abuse drag on until the camera cut away to a large treasure chest that held the prize. I barely hit play again as it appeared. Congratulations, Clark puffed and wheezed, his hair now mussed from the ordeal. Take a look at your secret prize. The girl was excited as the chest was lifted by barely visible wires. As was raised, even more confusion was heaped on top of what I was experiencing. My parents stood where the prize should be. They looked at the girl with a loving expression. She ran up to them and all three embraced. You won't disappoint us, will you? My mother asked. The crowd awed. The host promised to see everyone next time. The credits rolled. I stopped the tape, sat back, and let out a breath. The front door opened. I couldn't wait to show my parents the tape. I never got to tell them a word, however. As soon as they entered the living room, the woman with them screamed. She pointed at me, put a hand over her mouth, and ducked back into the entryway. My father charged at me, grabbing my shirt and pulling me from the couch. Mom shrieked and begged him to call the police instead of killing me. They had no idea who I was, but I immediately recognized the woman with them.
That's a very interesting way to end this. But that was the worst contestant. So, again, kind of like with the black eye one, I'm starting to see a pattern here. So what's happening at the end here?
So this is what I'm confused by, because I really love the idea of the story, because we've had lost episodes before, but I don't think we've ever had a live action one. So it's cool to see like a game show version of this.
Yeah, it's interesting because clearly this person watched a lot of the 80s, 90s Nickelodeon growing up.
Yeah, the setup's really good and cool, and it's like I said before, it's very clear, like. And it really feels like an actual show, and it's interesting because it's a lost episode. It's funny because this isn't like, it's not even a lost episode because it's on like tapes, although he couldn't find it until like somebody had like a bootleg copy. But it's a cool setup. The premise is interesting.
Even because it's an interesting. It's interesting, and I would love to see what would happen if they had more words. And this is what's killing me right now on the inside, because at the end they put this.
What did we talk about right at the top? Do not admit your mistake.
No, the thing is, because again, like they were clearly going with something where like the parents are like the prize. That seems a bit off. But now I have to wonder again: who is this protagonist?
Right,
who are they?
It's very confusing.
The dumb child that couldn't do shit.
Well, are they this kid's parents?
Right,
like what are they watching?
The twist at the end is kind of hard to parse, because it's definitely a twist. But I wasn't even reading it the first time and rereading it now. I wasn't sure what it meant.
It feels like when he started watching the video that history itself was rewriting itself. For some
that's
reason.
good a guess as any.
I mean, it felt like history was rewriting itself to where now he was on this show, even though he doesn't remember.
Like if he watches the video to completion, he loses his parents. Kind of concept,
but like It's not the history. It's like not what he remembers.
It's also weird.
It becomes
it didn't happen.
It didn't happen, but it becomes what he remembers, and then it becomes reality.
Yes,
that woman we all know. That woman we all know is that girl,
well,
obviously.
But it's also weird because it's like he was on this game show and he was an idiot, right? But then they mercilessly beat the shit out of him, and they record the whole thing. So it's like, who was airing that?
Well, see, actually, this is why I really enjoyed Dylan's take, which is that this is some sort of malignant demon video. And, like, it's kind of like a Ring scenario where it's self-actualizing.
Right.
So, this never happened. He was never on the game show. He was never beaten as a kid. And his parents were never sad. And his mom never put her little hands on her head in the audience. But by watching it, that actualizes and becomes what happened, and all of a sudden, he's a stranger in his own home.
He's rewrote history.
Right? By finishing the video, now he's fucked. Because now it's become reality.
And it was like a full video. It was just a clip.
No, it was the full episode.
Well, that was the full episode.
That was the full episode.
Clips. Okay.
Because he was either buying VHSs or buying illegally downloaded things on cassette.
Yeah, but it's like he saw a compilation on YouTube.
Right. Well, that's
it was two different things.
Right,
so...
it was a clip.
Yeah.
No,
what if this was a secret
because he found the clip. He found the clip, and that's what led him to trying to track down the VHSs.
Right, but if Dylan's like, it's a demon tape...
Well,
he initially found it on YouTube. So was the demon on YouTube?
YouTube is a demon, so let's not act like that's not.
He said demon tape. I just said it was rewriting history. He added the demon to it.
I mean, that's sure.
But anyway, like the thing was like,
who else would rewrite history?
Historians.
But true demons of our age.
Like, just watching it, like, was this like recorded in someone's basement just to make it look like a studio?
Well, clearly not. It had a setup very similar to that.
It didn't happen. It was recorded by Beelzebub in the fiery inferno and sent to our plane of existence to ruin this man's life.
Not just this man. What if one of us watched it? Did it?
Well, maybe we'll find a video where Dylan's like, they're like, oh, what's the state bird of the country? And Dylan's like, a turkey. And then he gets kicked in the balls because he was 8.
Mosquito.
And then all of a sudden, turns out his brother is a walrus and he's living in the Arctic. You know, it ruins his whole life.
And I'm the Eggman, I'm guessing?
No, you're just a seal.
What the fuck is happening right now?
All right, look, alternatively, what I originally thought...
This really is a disaster, John. I'm sorry that I didn't agree with you.
See, initially what I thought reading this was that this was sort of a like a unreliable narrator kind of thing, which is hard.
Yeah, but it's not the other unreliable narrator stories we've read. There was like a concise. There was a weird, concise vagueness to it. You know what I mean?
No,
this is just like it's very confusing.
And this is the thing, and we can also point to the word limit again because obviously this was very well written and very entertaining. Yeah. So I'm not saying it's like a writing flaw that this wasn't.
No, the setup's great.
Yeah.
Even the horror is great.
I feel like kind of the only thing right is that we have to sort of search outside the story and theorize about what it could be, since within the story there wasn't either the space or the time to kind of craft that.
I think the concept we should all be focused on with these contest things that we do more in the future and what we're doing right now is what's the bigger idea behind the story?
Or we can
and
come
could
up
that
with
be
crazy
can that be improved upon in a different meaning without any limitations to word? You know.
Well, here's the thing: if it's an unreliable narrator, we could have a boy scenario. Did anyone watch The Boy?
What?
The movie, The Boy.
Oh, Bram's.
That was a fucking treat. So this guy is like, I live with my parents, and he's like in the walls. He's in the walls with like a doll
Spoiler alert
mask
for The
on.
Boy.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah, but then
it's been out. It's art. If you haven't seen
I've
it,
seen that.
But in The Boy 2, it was a demon.
That was bullshit. The Boy 2 didn't even happen.
No, The Boy. I remember.
The Boy 2
hold on.
The Boy 1.
William, was that the movie where this couple's hired to babysit a doll?
Yes.
And it turns out there was an actual child living in
He was in the walls.
It was a man.
Right,
he was
a man.
Well,
he was
crazy. Yeah. Yes.
I remember. I did watch that.
So this...
That's like some Sam Raimi shit.
What a wonderful fucking movie. My point is...
I love Dylan's face.
What is going on?
We're gonna watch it. Because
we have to watch
we kind of ruined it.
Well, yeah, but we should still
watch it. The point is...
No plot now. Damn.
Yeah, but it's goofy as fuck.
It's a treat. It's a treat. The point is, this dude's living in the walls.
He said he's living in the basement.
The basement walls. He's parked out behind the furnace, you know? And he's just posted up back there. And they got this girl.
So initially, that's what I thought. I thought, like, his parents were so ashamed. They did bring him home, but they locked him in the basement, right?
Oh, and he got out?
Right. But
like,
then it's like, my parents didn't recognize me. Unless they didn't recognize him because he's so gross looking that they're like, what the fuck are you?
I don't
it's like when you drop a lollipop behind the couch, it gets covered
right,
in
but
hair.
here's the thing, like I can understand like parents. I can understand parents bringing their kid home and then like abusing them because they fucked up on a game show. But like, what?
I can't. That's fucking.
Well, I
horrendous.
can't understand. Obviously, I don't.
Here he
agree
gets
with
the
it.
shit kicked out of him on national television.
I get that it's not very believable, but that's more believable to me than a girl winning parents through a show.
Yeah,
that's the thing that's less believable.
That's why we circle back to Demon Tape.
Okay.
Or this was a crazy orphanage that was like, here's a way to win parents. Here you go.
Jesus. Again, now we're fucking out in orbit. It's great, but no, so like it's the whole idea that we talked about during the woods the woods or whatever, the one with the girl and the doppelgangers. It's the same kind of thing. You see somebody, it's you, but you're like, I don't remember this. It's kind of like when Will reads these and then forgets that he's actually on this fucking show. But again, I love that idea. I've always loved that idea. I think that's creepy. But yeah, the ending just kind of falls flat for me because it's just unclear.
I want to ask a question to you guys.
Sure.
Like, so with the ending, obviously it falls flat for you. But like, how would you end this then?
I kind of said it like it would have been like, how'd you get out? Like his parents, and didn't tell the little girl. Like they've just been like feeding him at midnight. Like a fucking gremlin in the basement.
Just like the ambiguity of it, pretty much. More ambiguity.
Yeah, well, this is like ambiguous, but it's not.
But then how did he get out of that? But then how did he get out of the house to buy the DVDs? Didn't he go out and buy VHS?
Amazon. He ordered on eBay.
That was eBay. Yeah,
he ordered them on eBay.
He was like, leave him behind the chimney. No one will look there. We don't want to tip him off.
No, he's got one of the trestle windows, and he just like he holds his hands out from the basement and just takes them.
Now you're saying that, I'm like, this is a long shot of what this could be. But
hold on. Buckle up, boys.
Hold on, because it feels more like
you already had demon tape.
It feels more like, I guess like the guy was, I would say what you say, those who say on the computer like a NEET almost.
What?
Doesn't leave the house, stays on his computer.
What's a NEET?
They're shut-ins. Usually,
is this one of your goddamn weeaboo fucking Reddit shit?
Let me finish.
I do know what NEET is.
Okay.
So, he stays inside and he does nothing, and basically, some parents don't like that their kids do that, and they don't like the fact that they're not athletic.
We're all fucking NEETs then.
I thought parents loved that shit.
Well, anyway, but like, you notice how the girl was, she could answer, she was smart, she was doing things, she was, climbing, and he was doing nothing. And it felt that it's like a long shot, like I said, but like it feels like comparing like two different kids. Like one that some parents would be like, oh, I'm embarrassed that my kid's doing this, versus my kid.
You're saying metaphorically.
Metaphorically.
Okay, Dylan.
So it's like the Bible.
Okay. All right. We're gonna end that right there. Okay, Dylan. That was far less of a long shot than fucking Demon Tape rewriting history.
Once again, I didn't say Demon Tape. He said
you
Demon
still
Tape.
said rewriting it. That is way more out there than a metaphor for NEET kids. That makes way more sense. You're so weird sometimes.
I have moments.
Yeah, I know.
A lot of them.
It's strange.
It's like the Book of Job.
Please
we're just gonna
stop
cut
talking about
that
the Bible.
right there.
All right. Well, yeah, I think it's interesting. And again, while Rin, it has a direction. I just think at the end, I don't fully see the picture of the end. But maybe if they had more space, maybe they could have done something. Those are my final thoughts. So let's get on to it. Final thoughts on the worst contestant, starting with Dylan.
I enjoyed it. As everyone didn't really like the ending here, I think it's just vague enough for me. I liked how it ended. Because I love all these, how I'm coming up with all these theories, but you guys are like, it's falling flat for you, but like I just see it as, so what actually did happen here?
I didn't say it fell flat for me.
I liked all the theories.
Just the ending.
I didn't say that.
The setup's great.
Just Dan being a grump.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, that's me.
Demon Tape. That is all.
I mean, it's no Psychosis.
You can't sell. That could be a spoiler.
That could be a spoiler. Yeah, I'm assuming that's... You do these in order, so I'm assuming Psychosis
Well,
is going to come out
I might release this first just to get out of the way.
Well, retcon.
That was a dream.
That was a dream. Still in
It's a demon tape. It's about to come true.
Again, yeah, really great setup. Really clear that this person grew up on the shows like me. I had a deeply personal connection to this. And yeah, the idea is cool and creepy. It's just the end is just very strange.
Right.
Very strange.
But for a setup to a lost episode, like that's good stuff.
Yes.
That's
yeah.
really good. That's a good
absolutely.
setup for a lot of you could do a lot with that setup. So whoever wrote this, and revisions too. I think you can build upon.
Dover wrote it.
Thank you, Dover.
Dover Heathcliff.
Dover Heathcliff Esquire.
Moving on.
This man's gonna handle my parents' estate.
Jesus.
The first place story. And it is
Thank you.
the only story with 3 votes.
Oh, snaps.
It got a first, second, and a third place
Holy
vote.
shit.
Which of us didn't vote for it?
Gee, well, I wonder.
I don't want to know that.
I gave it a first place vote.
Of course you did, because of the subject matter.
I don't remember,
blame you.
so I'm in suspense.
Wrestling on Channel 93 by username Urkelbot666.
I love that.
Champagne corks everywhere. Wow.
So one
watch
thing
your
about
eye.
this, this was the only story that came with images. Which
Yes.
I did not include them on the document, but I do have them on my phone.
We all have printed out
these
pieces
are-
of paper.
I'm sure we will
That
put
is the
them-
first image that came with this.
Put them in the video.
Excellent.
I don't know if he probably edited it or made it.
Yeah, I'd imagine so.
And that's one, and then
Extra mile.
he also had, and I assume this might be an image. Maybe this is like an actual clip of what we're about to read. So I don't know if this is a spoiler, but without any context, it isn't. It's kind of this creepy looking man kind of looking at a fire.
Haunting.
So
It just came.
So we have. I'm not a big fan of wrestling. Neither is William, but we have 2 pretty big fans.
It's great. Well, I wouldn't say I'm a big fan. I love.
Dan's a diehard.
I have the rock tattooed on my arm.
All right. So while we're reading this, if you see a reference that maybe me and William wouldn't see, because I assume that maybe this is based on some sort of. Because if it's anything like the first 2 we've read, it's probably based on something.
It's
like
it's possible. The thing that I like about professional wrestling is how stupid it can get. That's what I love about it. Like Dylan, my family, my sister particularly really just love it. They love the entertainment value of it. They love the thrill of it. I just like the dumber the storyline, I just eat that shit up. Like, oh, he was having sex with my sister, but it turns out she's actually my mom. Like that kind of shit. I love it.
So let me ask you this, because I assume this is, because I do remember reading this a little bit more now, but I think this takes place. I think he's about to like, this is a spoiler for the story, but like I think he's gonna like watch older wrestling.
Yeah, it's
stuff.
like in the 80s.
So my question for you two is, how far back is your wrestling fan? Does your wrestling fandom go? Like, have you watched old shit, or do you just kind of?
When I was a kid, I did actually watch it religiously. When I was like 10 to like 13, 14.
And what like era would that be?
That was the Attitude Era, right? That was the era where like wrestling was R-rated, where there was like blood and like bats and barbed wire, especially the WWE. Like they had female wrestlers, but they were literally just strippers. They didn't actually fight ever. They were literally just throwing panties matches. Yeah, they actually wrestle now. Women aren't treated like objects. It only took them fucking 30 some odd years.
It's weird though, because in the 80s, the women were actually wrestling before then too, and it wasn't until the Attitude Era they were like
that they were just
the models.
They were just strippers, and they were making out and doing bra and panties matches.
Except for Lita and Trish Stratus, who were like the pioneer
to an extent. Yeah.
Jazz too.
Yeah, but that's the Attitude. That was like, yeah, just super violent, super sexy, like R-rated. What can we get away with on TV? People saying "suck it" all the time. That was the big deal.
Whoa!
Weren't women flashing the cameras too?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
My monocle popped out when I heard "suck it" for the first time.
Yeah, but that
I dropped my tea and biscuits.
That's the kind of shit that I love. The cheesy, dumb, like we're super cool but we're lame as shit type stuff. I love how dumb wrestling can get.
Well, let's see. I was gonna say, let's see how dumb this story can get.
Well,
but it's first place,
right?
So it can't be that dumb.
Well,
so
I could have voted it for how incredibly crazy it is. So.
The 90s Attitude Era was crazy. 80s, a little bit more tame.
It was goofy.
It was goofy,
Wrestlers
but it was
in the 80s
goofy.
were like cartoon
Well, let's
characters.
see if we can. Let's see if they define an era here.
Do you want me to start
You know what,
off?
Dan? Yeah, let's have Dylan start. Actually,
All right.
Well, thank you.
The
Since,
resident fucking wrestling expert.
he seemed excited when I handed him the paper.
I mean, I did vote first place for it.
Oh yeah!
All right, so Dylan, why don't you take the reins? This is Wrestling on Channel 93.
Julia never let me watch wrestling. Of course I could watch it, but it wasn't worth the ridicule and dirty looks she gave me while I did.
Fucking Julia's wrong.
Sounds like my mom. After she left me, I started watching shows like World Wrestling Entertainment, Monday Night Raw, and SmackDown, almost out of spite. I knew she hated pro wrestling, and now that she was gone, I wanted to watch as much of it as possible. In a childish way, it did make me feel better.
Okay, so for the noobs in the room, Monday Night Raw and SmackDown are the two, like, big
They're the
weekly shows.
Yeah.
All right.
I know what Ron SmackDown.
Well, listen, you did this to me before when we were watching football, so now...
Yeah. That's fine.
It's not pro wrestling, it's wrestling entertainment.
It's
They're
also...
really professional.
so here's the thing. If there's already a mistake in the story, because if he was watching this in the 80s, it wasn't World Wrestling Entertainment. It was WWF.
World
I
Wrestling
think
Federation.
I think this first paragraph is more like recent.
I know, I'm just joking.
Right. Okay.
I'm being a shit.
Yeah. Since I hadn't watched any wrestling in years, I was so out of the loop that I barely knew who any of the wrestlers were, and the whole thing just had a different feel to it. Nowadays, it's so bright and flashy and polished looking that was never what appealed to me. I always liked my wrestling a little dark, a little grimy.
Attitude Era.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I knew that my cousin Roger had a pretty extensive collection of old tapes and DVD coverings, practically the past 60 years of pro wrestling on TV. I gave him a call and asked if he had some old videos I could borrow. He said that he could throw some stuff into a box and drop it off the next time he was in town. A few days later, when I got home from work, there was a box sitting on my stoop with a note taped on the box reading, "Some tapes in here from that old wrestling show we used to watch on Channel 93. Dumpster dove them after the TV station shut down. I haven't even watched half this shit. Enjoy." I dug through the box, seeing cassettes and DVDs from old pay-per-view events, as well as a lot of tapes recorded off TV. There was a series of tapes in white plastic labeled MPWA in marker. These had to be from the local show that the note had mentioned. I decided to start with these. If memory served me right, that show was pretty dark and grimy. In the rear corner of the closet, I still had a small TV VCR unit, which seemed like the perfect device on which to watch old wrestling. I plugged it in and popped one of the tapes in. It started with a lot of color bars and sounds test stuff, and there was a counter along the bottom of the screen. It looked like some of these shows hadn't even been cleaned up for broadcast yet. Eventually, a fuzzy logo swiped onto the screen, MPWA. There was a generic-sounding synth theme song that I instantly recognized from when Roger and I watched this program on Channel 93. I couldn't believe that I had almost totally forgotten about this show. We used to watch it every week.
The quality was terrible. The audio was fuzzy and watery, and the picture seemed to never be in focus. The tracking lines were constantly flickering up and down the screen. There was a brightly lit wrestling ring in the center of the shot. An old-fashioned sounding voice, deep and bouncy like a tuba, introduced the competitors coming to the ring. The man's voice was like that of an old friend. I could have recognized it anywhere. I might not have known from where, but I could never forget the tone and tenor. It made sense, I guess. The man had been a kind of a babysitter for my cousin and me. The quality of the matches on these tapes was different from what was on TV today. The fights were slower, more violent, and unsavory. Lots of illegal choking, throwing each other out of the ring and pounding each other with folding chairs, and way more blood than what would fly on TV today.
I just want to quickly say the last sentence in that paragraph I like a lot, because the trope of stories, especially with haunted gaming stuff, is like, oh, I was so nostalgic for, you know? Right. They always have to say that. There's other ways to say and imply being nostalgic of something. This is done smartly, where it says, it makes sense, I guess, the man had been kind of a babysitter for me and my cousin, implying that when he was a kid,
right? Well,
they would watch this together and he would feel this.
I think both stories do that well. I think the previous one we just read and this one does it very well.
Right, they don't say I was nostalgic for 90s Nickelodeon shows.
Right. This certainly feels like Attitude Era, like we were talking before, based on what they're describing. Which, by the way, just as an aside, this is the era where like The Rock started. Mm-hmm. Like, and now he's a fucking movie star. You know, people like Stone Cold and who else would like people?
Well, Rowdy Roddy Piper was before. You had Rikishi, Rhino, Booker T. That was a little bit after.
A lot of these people, they don't. They stay in the business.
I had a cousin,
or whatever, but The Rock is like the big one.
Yeah, I had a cousin who was really into it. They had a bunch of wrestling figurines, and I remember when I was really young. They were a little bit older than me, like 10 years older. And they would actually like play wrestle with the action figures for me. I found it really entertaining. So I do remember I remember Stone Cold. I remember that. I never actually watched the Attitude Era or anything.
But that was the thing. They like these people, these characters that they created were like so iconic that even if you didn't really know, but if you were like kind of in that like hemisphere of people that did.
Where was like this is a societal. Where was like Hulk Hogan and like
that's the era before that was like the 80s.
Well,
so Hulk Hogan, Hulk Hogan would
or like
come,
Randy Sat like
yeah, that's like the 80s.
Okay.
Well,
that, like
so it's weird that it's funny you mention that because Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage were mostly known for their 80s time in WWE. You know, as the top guys, the Mega Powers,
right?
The top guys, but then they were let go. They left the company to join WCW, the alternate to WWE at the time, which was having their own way with the NWO.
There was in the early to mid 90s, there was like 3 different competing wrestling things, and the only one that remained was WWE, and Hulk Hogan was coming back.
Where was the $1 Million Man in all this?
That's a good question.
He was actually on WCW at the time.
Yeah.
Ted DiBiase.
It was those 3, and then they all kind of fell out, and Hulk Hogan came back. By the way, just as an aside, Macho Man Randy Savage is the greatest wrestler of all time. I will fight anyone to the death.
And you have your opinion.
Who disagree with
normally I would feel bad because we're trying to read through Urkelbot's story, but given what they've written, I assume they also must be.
But
fans
also,
right, they're probably yelling at us right now. We're probably gonna do a bunch of shit wrong.
But also remember, this is a local show that they're recording.
Right.
Back then, local shows.
Right. If this was on public access, there's nobody.
Well, the thing is, they usually send people to local shows to find out all that stuff.
Right, like scouts. Yeah.
To see, like he was mentioning, folding chairs and the more blood that would fly on TV, you would have to do crazy things like McFoley
to get attention.
Okay, and that's how you would get your job in wrestling.
You asked us to be the resident experts on this.
All right, let's continue. All right, William, continue where you left off.
The tapes were labeled with what seemed like episode numbers, and I was watching in order as far as I knew. On an episode which said it aired November 3rd, 1979...
That's crazy. That was when we announced this contest, and here we are 30 years later.
Oh, this guy! The show was slightly different. It started not with the typical wide shot of a ring in a dim area, but ringside with an announcer speaking to the camera directly. There was no fans, no crowd noise, was 2020, and the lights were all on.
It's too real.
Thank you for joining us tonight on Mid-Pacific Wrestling, the announcer spoke in his smooth baritone voice. Thank you for joining us tonight on Mid-Pacific Wrestling.
Ooh.
We have a special event tonight, a grudge match featuring Clayton Bromley, who's making his return to competition 8 months after being injured by his opponent tonight, Wallace Wildfire Jones. Neither of these names rang any kind of bell with me. The camera panned back to show a man with wild curly hair and a large red beard. The words Wallace Wildfire Jones appeared digitally on the screen, and the man started talking.
Opponent, he spat. I'll bet his opponent, all right. Except the crowd ain't gonna show up. He's scared. The coward ain't gonna show up. He's scared stiff that I'll crack his skull open again, just like last time he tried to fight me in the ring. The threats were so campy, I had to smile. This is the kind of shit that I love. The announcer spoke again. Are you suggesting that Bromley has gotten cold feet? He is, after all, the one who challenged you to this empty arena, no-holds-barred brawl. Just then there was a loud sound of bellowing reverberating through the empty gymnasium. The camera swept to an entrance behind where the folding chairs had been set up for the live event, presumably being taped later in the evening. A man in a red, competition-style singlet was marching past the rows of chairs toward where Wildfire was. He was bald and had a mustache. Bromley. Wildfire turned to Bromley and was immediately struck with a chair the man had hurled. Bromley lifted the bearded man and threw him over the metal guardrail at ringside in the first row of chairs. Pretty standard stuff. The two men brawled for a while as the announcer reiterated the danger of this kind of match. There appeared to be real animosity between the two men. It was really intense fighting, sloppy and violent. Clayton Bromley was getting the lion's share of the offense, mostly punching Wildfire in his face, which was bleeding from the initial shot with the chair. At one point, Bromley set Wildfire up for a suplex on the wooden floor. It's when you grab a guy from behind and you lift him over and you slam him back.
Thank you, Dad.
No problem. Suplex City, bitch. I lost my spot. Oh, okay, here we go. Suplex on the wooden floor. While he had the man lifted in the air, Bromley pivoted his body, landing Wildfire's spine right across the metal guardrail. Oof. It looked dangerous and was sort of sickening to see. With no crowd noise, the camera was picking up the sounds that the two wrestlers were making. After the botched suplex, Wildfire was shouting, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" as he writhed on the ground. Bromley responded by spitting on the man and calling him a stupid bastard. With his opponent incapacitated, Bromley set up a folding table in the entrance aisle. With effort, he dragged Jones over to it and hoisted the man onto it.
Wildfire seemed to be trying to roll himself off the table as Broomley grabbed another folding chair. He raised it and brought it down across the face of his opponent, who screamed in pain and anger. Another crack of the chair silenced him and stopped his moving. The announcer was pleading with Bromley to stop the assault. It sounded rehearsed, but with an edge of genuine concern. The camera followed Bromley as he walked to the ring and pulled a bottle from underneath. He walked back to where his opponent lay unconscious and dumped the contents of the bottle over Wildfire. Before I knew what was happening, Bromley had struck a match from somewhere and thrown it onto the man who had injured him all those months ago. The man on the table erupted into flames and the camera fell to the floor. The picture on the screen bounced and turned sideways, giving a view of the burning man on the table. The camera operator attempted to help Jones, but Bromley knocked him unconscious with a stiff elbow. The announcer was nowhere to be seen. The shot of the burning man lingered on the screen for a very long time, the sounds of crackling fire, broken occasionally by the mutterings of Bromley saying things like, "I told you not to fuck with me, Wildfire. You knew you had this coming." There were no further MPWA tapes in the box. I called Roger and told him about the tape, asking if he remembered anything about it. He said he had never watched any of those tapes and said that it was probably just a fake storyline angle. I couldn't see how or why they would shoot something so gruesome. I tried to search online for any information about the event, but there was nothing except that MPWA had on its final broadcast on October 27th before closing its doors due to bankruptcy. I haven't watched any of those tapes again. Maybe I'll stick to a brighter, flashier new wrestling shows for a while. And that was Wrestling on Channel 93.
Yucko!
And yeah, I think that's a pretty good story.
Yeah.
You see something that's obviously cheesy, it's staged, you know that it's violent, and then you see something that maybe kind of is a little bit gray. Is it real? Is it part of a storyline?
Well, I think right off the bat, the reason why this story is number one, and I don't think there's anything wrong with what the other stories were trying to do, but I think this one is there wasn't a twist, right? They weren't trying to like make some kind of ambiguous like, what is the meaning? It's literally just a dude murdered another dude.
Like a snuff film that started as a wrestling
as
film.
revenge, right?
Yeah.
Now, it's either, that's the interesting thing. It's not even trying to make a twist. It either is that, or, and again, I don't know much about like those old wrestling things, but maybe it was fake. Maybe it's part of a storyline.
They do stuff like that. Like they've had people like buried alive, or the car catches on fire.
Well, for the time at 1979. It wasn't known for that extreme violence yet.
Well, again,
except for ECW,
that's
which didn't come by.
Let me ask a question before I forget it.
Right.
This could happen in modern wrestling or older, whatever. Have you ever seen, and this could be either or, have you ever seen something in wrestling where clearly something goes off script? Either where one person gets a little too violent with the other, and they do something that's unscripted, and it's like it actually causes like a serious problem.
Yes.
Or there's an accident where someone...
I always assumed that was part of the fun. Am I crazy? Isn't that what people love?
Well, I would assume something... I get, obviously there's a lot of things in wrestling that can't be scripted. Like, obviously, everything... Like, there's a general storyline, and we all get that.
Right.
But I mean, like, something that... it's, like, so... Because usually if there's a mistake, they can cover it up pretty easily. Like, they just improv it, right? But, like something where it's so obvious that like,
I think that I don't think I've ever seen something where, because they're professionals, right? And if they really had it out for somebody and were malicious, they'd probably get their ass handed to them in terms of like being fired or whatever else. Because it's silly and a lot of it's fake, but it is still dangerous. It's a dangerous sport. You're jumping off fucking ropes and stuff and kicking people. You can't really fake that. There two come to mind. One of them you probably remember because you and I watched it during a pay-per-view event. There was a wrestler one time, Sicario or Cesaro, whatever. Do you remember this? Wait, this was a couple years ago when he hit the turnbuckle or something.
Oh yes,
and his face caught the turnbuckle and his two teeth flew up into his gums, and he started bleeding from the mouth. It actually happened. And now I think he still wrestles. Now he wrestles with a mouth guard because he has to. Because it fucking kill you. The other one off the top of my head is much older. With that match between Kurt Angle and Shane McMahon. Do you remember that? during one of the events where he
Oh, the glass?
there was a glass display at the entrance, and they had this really intense match, and Kurt was throwing Shane through it.
Kurt was suplexing Shane.
He was trying to throw Shane through the glass with a suplex, and it didn't break the first time. So he hit it, and he landed on his neck, and
you heard the sound up
right.
sound. Like,
and this is another thing too, because you don't really. It's kind of like other sports. We don't really hear the people talking, but apparently, like when they were talking about it later on, they were saying like Shane was like, "No, do it again, just throw me through. Try to throw me through it," and they eventually got it. But yeah, shit goes wrong. It's dangerous. Shit goes horribly awry.
Yeah, but none of these things sound like a person had malicious intent.
Right. Well, that's the thing. I've never
ring.
seen that really, to my
Well,
knowledge.
so there is known instances. One guy, JBL, John Bradshaw Layfield, he was a big dude. He in the 90s, everyone knew him as an acolyte for Undertaker. But there was an instance where he became this Southern cowboy dude. And there was a guy named the Blue Meanie. This was on ECW, where it was supposed to be a shoot, where nothing was supposed to happen. It was supposed to be a brawl between a bunch of guys. And JBL took an actual chair and maliciously hit him square in the head and had him bleed. There's another guy. His name is Mad Jack, or it was New Jack. One of the something.
So
Jack.
it kind of sounds like, based on what you're saying, that might be like the basis for this story. It could be.
Well, there's a guy in the 90s. I forget what the first name he had, but it was something Jack. It wasn't Cactus. It wasn't like McFoley.
Whatever.
But he took a staple gun, I believe, at one point to someone and actually
Holy shit.
was doing it, and he was taking, like, maliciously taking weapons and
That's fucked up.
purposely trying to make them bleed.
And that clearly wasn't part of it.
It wasn't part of it, but he's known as the hot-tempered. No one wanted to work with him, but people still did it because a lot of fans loved what his persona
And again,
of being mad all the time, and they're like, this guy is awesome, but he had a temper with him. If you messed up something, if he got hurt when you messed up, he was gonna hurt you back, right? Purposely.
but again, like this person's right. It is very clean. Like even 20 years ago, they would like fight outside the ring. There'd be street brawls. You would take out a kendo stick.
Yeah, I remember seeing a clip of even like John Cena like
Right.
throwing a guy through like a door
Right.
window or something, flipping him onto like a windshield.
But now it's much more controlled. Like they very rarely get out of the ring.
Didn't like Undertaker do a bunch of shit like that too, where like he was outside the ring a lot?
Undertaker and Mick Foley was the other big one. Mick Foley actually tore his ear off during one of his matches.
That's the most famous Hell in a Cell match where it was planned. The first one was planned where he was supposed to be thrown off 30 feet up in the air onto a table, which happened in real life.
Right.
Okay.
He hit the table, and somehow he got himself back up after they were like, "Oh my god!" And the announcer goes, "Oh my god, he's dead." JR goes, "Oh my god, he's dead." Like basically on air, they lift the cage up. Ambulance comes out. They stretch him out. He gets off the stretcher and goes, "No, I can still do this." He climbs back up top. And both of them, to this day, they go, "Are you okay?" He's like, "I'm fine. You can do this."
Mick Foley, by the way, is a crazy motherfucker. He also lives on Long Island.
Nice.
He's here.
But
okay,
I've seen him.
But let's get back to the
right.
Actually, I want to make about the story, which we read.
This has become a wrestling podcast.
Not real wrestling.
Well, it's relevant for so
not real pretend wrestling.
It's real to me.
The thing that Dan said was accurate, where it kind of the conceptually not biting off more than you can chew as far as a small short form style of writing.
It's very straightforward.
The problem with the twist is you have to build it, and you just don't have time to build it in this kind of word limit. So this story, I think, did the right thing in not building it. However, there is a little bit of a twist, and it's very subtle. It's very low key.
Mm-hmm.
At the end,
talking about the date. Yeah, it was very
I don't
clear.
know if you caught it.
No, I did, and I remember reading at the
good.
first. Yeah, it's very clear.
Because
it's very concise.
At the end,
it's well written.
Well, at the beginning, the episode aired. This
well,
episode
it didn't air. It was like a rehearsal tape.
This rehearsal tape was written November 3rd. And the final broadcast was October 27th, before abruptly closing its doors.
Which would have been almost a week before, which would make sense.
But yeah, they would have been recording these ahead of time anyway.
Well, yes.
Right? Like I have to imagine that, right? Like they're not recording them and printing them out.
I think the authorial intent is very clear.
Yeah, I think the intent.
Somebody was murdered, so we're not going to do this anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think subtlety works, and yeah, I mean. No, this story is great from beginning to end. I mean, I really think that it's entertaining, especially for two people who, I mean, for me, who doesn't really watch wrestling. For people who watch wrestling, it's probably good.
Right.
But let me ask you too, yeah, I guess just more about the story.
Well, you were able to follow it, right? It struck a personal chord with us, but you were able to follow what was going on pretty easily. It's a very simple story.
The cool thing was, like, I was imagining, like, the description was, like, not a lot of description,
right.
but I could imagine it in my head,
right.
like, because after seeing so many, like, I'm like, okay, I know how this guy looks, and this is what drew me to the story. I was like, I know how this guy looks, I know how this guy looks, and I'm picturing them doing the moves in my head. I'm like, okay, I see where this is going, and the biggest thing is, because this is 1979, where something like this hadn't really occurred at the time.
Yeah.
It was like, this was more of the PG, beginning PG
Well, again,
stuff.
not on public access.
But not on public access, yeah, but like, it's kind of like one of those, like you said, is he dead? Is it fake or is it real? And that's what happens when you're watching wrestling all the time is, wait, was that planned or was that not planned at all? And then you can see
right.
like, oh, that wasn't planned at all. Like certain things are like, okay.
But I think the evidence points to the fact that this really happened because of what William pointed out, that the last air date was a week before.
Yeah, and from what you're telling me, it sounds like these type of things typically would happen. Where like you would have.
You wouldn't light someone on fire.
I would say the only to play devil's advocate, the only thing I will say is that, and this kind of, again, I like this because it gives credence to the idea that maybe it was staged and it could have not been that because it was a no crowd.
Right.
So they could have.
Right.
You know, who's
and it's also his cousin.
Right, like because there's only. I assume there's only one camera, kind of, because the way probably the old wrestling works, there's probably just one camera.
Yeah, it's just one watching the entire.
Right,
ring.
so I assume like if they wanted to, you know, after he chucks him and knocks him unconscious on the table, right. You know, they move him and put him like a fake body. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they light that on fire. You know? Now again, I think that's what the second picture is. It's kind of fuzzy.
Well, again,
that's what this is.
It's also super cool because this person decided to put the extra effort in and
right. That's why I like too.
It's really clever, and it's got the scan lines. It's got the kind of old shitty RCA TV look. So definitely bonus points for that as well.
But I appreciate the subtlety, like the subtle, like, oh, here's like a little throw. Here's something that in remembrance of like Kane or something.
Yes.
Of certain characters. I'm like, I like that because it's like. Yeah, little nuances of these characters that
there's subtle nods to Kane was like the Undertaker's brother, he was like a demon. That was his whole persona. And that like they set him on fire allegedly a couple times. Wasn't he in like the Undertaker set his house on fire or some shit? And
the
he was
first Ring of Fire
match. Yeah, or some shit like that. That kind of see again. That's the shit that I love. The wrestling is fun, the fighting is fun, but it's like the dumb, fucking crazy storylines is what I really do.
But that's what I liked about this because it's like there's some nods to some wrestlers, and also like it bends it's a lost episode,
right?
It could be real,
right? It
could be fake, and it's tend to happen a lot because then you watch it and you go, oh, okay. I don't repeat myself, but like you look at it and you go, oh. That really just happened.
Yeah, as someone who watches it regularly, you kind of get a keen eye for things. You can see when they're pulling punches and things like that. Yeah.
All right, so let's do so starting with William. Final thoughts on Wrestling Channel 93.
A worthy number one. Very entertaining. Made sense all the way through. Very well written. I liked it.
Dylan?
I thoroughly enjoyed this one.
Yep. And Dan?
Struck a chord on a personal note, well written, very simple story. The horror is very clear. Is definitely worthy of the number one pick.
And I think, and it's funny because all of us picked a different number one when we were judging these initially. But I think as a group, I think these three stories, I think they are well deserving of the places they got. Congratulations to Beth, Urkelbot, and whoever the fuck wrote the worst contestant.
John, it's Dover.
It's Dover Heathcliff.
All right, sorry. Thank you. So our three winners are third place, Beth Morton. Second place, Dover
Heathcliff.
Dover Heathcliff.
Heathcliff Bar. And Wrestling Channel 3 is number one story. Urkelbot 666. thank you again, everybody, for...
Thank you for your patience.
Yeah.
As we took 4.5 years to do this.
And thank you for everyone else, because I probably voted
for
for everyone else who wasn't in this list.
Everybody that submitted, we all read them. We all liked them for different reasons. I remember a particularly disgusting one about it was very dirty, that I actually got a really good chuckle out of.
The honorable...
Of course it was. Fucking gross.
Yeah, there was one that the one I thought was my number one didn't even make the top 3, honestly. That was written by Sakura. So, Sakura, if you're listening to this, you should post yours.
Okay,
it's really good.
Can I just say, now that you mentioned Sakura, and I keep forgetting to bring this up when we record these, it's been... during the height of the pandemic, Sakura was doing Twitch streams where she was reading H.P. Lovecraft stories with, like, ASMR fire crackling in the background. And I actually tuned into a couple of those, and it was very nice, because I would actually, like, fall asleep listening to them, and it was a wonderful little... So thank you, Sakura, because that was a wonderful little pick-me-up, reading about awful, horrific alien things in this uncertain, terrible time.
Right. Whoever wrote about the whacking one...
That was here's a funny little story. Peeling back the curtain, the person who wrote that story was a user named Pete Fruity, which is an alternative account that Beth uses to write joke stories.
Damn,
she wrote it as a joke story, and when I told her,
I would invert Beth's stories on this list.
You are such. When I told her. I think she literally said she didn't know how to feel.
That's fair. That's fair.
But anyway, that was just... All jokes aside, guys, thank you to everyone who entered. Honestly, I mean, literally almost everybody got at least a vote. Almost everyone got at least a first, second, or third place vote. So if you entered this contest, and I know there was a lot of people that messaged me saying that they wanted to, but they couldn't think of an idea. And because lost episodes are hard. It's a dead genre for a reason.
Is it really? I didn't even know.
It's hard to... Because they're hard to write.
Well, especially now with, like...
today.
well, that's the thing, because you have to... Because these are all set kind of in the past, with the exception of the first one that Beth wrote. And I think it's only because it's very, like, behind the scenes. But it would be hard to do something like this now because of the internet, right? You can't do a modern version... Where it's like, oh, there was a Gravity Falls lost episode. Because fucking internet exists.
Well,
this shit has to be done. Well, yeah, but they're probably terrible. Like, this shit, these good ones have to be done in a specific time period. Or before the dawn of the internet. Otherwise, they fall flat.
Right. Well,
this was fun. I would like to do this again.
Yeah, I think the most important thing about this and this is just everything being totally serious, I learned a great deal.
Yeah.
And I've gained a lot of respect for other people in the community who've done content, especially Undercooked Analysis, who've done lots of these now. And it's not as easy as it looks. It's surprise, surprise. And it's hard to get people together, obviously, right now. But, in the future, I have another idea for a contest that I will go over with you guys. And maybe we'll do that next time. Maybe, or not next time, but maybe at some point we'll do it.
John,
what?
When is Jimmy Bones coming back?
God, I was just going to say that. Damn it.
So this has been Scare Your Friends, and thank you all who participated in the very first Scare Your Friends content.
What are the prizes?
Yes. So for the third and second place prize, so first of all, we are going to do the YouTube video series Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared at some point.
Okay.
That was for getting to 5 entries. And to getting to 10 entries, we will do Ben Drowned. So
cool.
Look forward to that.
That one I'm very familiar with.
That one,
actually. Both
of those, I am very scared for how I'm going to do that.
Okay.
But that aside, for Beth and Dover, whoever Dover may be, you get to pick a story for us to read on Scare Your Friends. I think I set the word limit to something like less than 6,000. Although if you just to prevent us from doing like a 10-part thing.
Anything but the showers.
Well, we won't do anything. Obviously, something we've already read and something that you
5 and 6,
something that you think we would enjoy, or something we can at least shit on pretty easily.
Yeah,
or that we won't enjoy.
But just not the content.
And as for Urkelbot, again, you can also pick the same thing. You pick creepypasta, or you can pick. We decided to go other forms of media with you. So with the first place story. So if you would like us to, we can't do obviously a real time movie watching together because obviously we can't.
Why not?
No, we won't do that. But
we can do it. We can do a commentary track, John.
We do a post discussion.
Like a post. It's going to be we will either do a standard. So for Urkelbot, if you want to do the same thing, you can pick a creepypasta story for us to read, 6,000 words or less. Again, this is for everybody. If you find a story that's like 6,500 words, like you can do it. Like I just want to keep. I want to keep a limit just to like right. So, but if you want us to do like a movie, we'll say movie or maybe a book. That's not too long, like a movie or book that you think you would like us to keep. A novella or a movie, we'll say.
If you do,
and if we do that, then we would do like a post commentary where we either all read the novella individually or we all watch the movie together or something.
What about a spooky album, like the Monster Mash? But if that was an album,
you want us to do a music review?
If Monster Mash was an album.
Urkelbot, I will give you a suggestion. If you do decide to do a movie, you need to pick the most violent, gory thing you can possibly find. Because Dylan can't watch that stuff. So I would love to see him just be grossed out the whole time.
I'm gonna cover my eyes. I'll say, I'm doing right now. I'm covering my eyes and go, what's happening?
All right, well now he's... screwed yourself with that response, Dylan.
Yeah.
All right, but
I just want
shut up.
All right.
Monster Mash. It was a graveyard smash.
The Monster Mash. Spooky.
So thank you to all of our contestants again, Urkelbot, Dover, and Beth Morton. And but yeah, seriously, this was great. Again, I am sorry that it took so long, but we are happy to do this. And every time I record these, it reminds me that these are worth doing. So thank you to my friends as well for being there as well. So all right, so this has been the end of the first ever Scare Your Friends contest, Lost Episodes edition. This has been me, John, A.K. Skillfully, Dan, William, and Dylan. We'll see you on the next episode. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other.